Hello. It's been a minute since I've done an official YouTube channel update, and since it's the anniversary of my YouTube channel, 17th anniversary, going back to June 24th, 2008. Is that the right date? I think so. I decided I would let you know what's going on with things. I thought about doing a video like this around the new year, but I was like, I got stuff going on. I'll put it off a month or two. And then before you know it, half the year is gone because time stinks. And there's nothing we can do about it. Time just marches on until we're all dust and bones. But there's a lot of stuff going on. I'm gonna try to fill you in. I have my little Google Doc. Usually I write down my notes. I haven't done a channel update in like over 2 years. Usually I write down notes, but yeah, 17 years ago, I uploaded Baseball Stars, and I haven't accomplished much since then. Haven't done a whole lot. No, I've done a little bit here and there with the YouTube and the Flea Market Madness and the video game years and certain guidebooks and podcast shenanigans. The 50th Flea Market Madness was back in December, if you haven't seen it. And while it may be the last one in that format, I thought 50 was a nice round number to sort of, if not end it on, to give a nice special. Like it was a nice sort of I think semi-send off to the adventures of Pat and Frank. Frank not that he wants to do less of the videos. I just think we're all getting older, and I think we don't have the energy we used to. Frank's in his mid-70s, so it's getting a bit tougher to get him out to the swap meet. And plus, I don't go to the swap meet as often as I used to. I go like 3 times a year at most at this point because of other stuff going on, and it's hard for me to get up at 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday. I used to do that every week for 10 years, and it got to the point where I think while I was working on the first book, where it just got harder and harder, less energy, and then the rest of my day would be, I'd be done after coming home at like 11 in the morning. I would just be wiped out the rest of my Sunday. A lot has changed in 17 years since 2008, right? The retro game collecting scene, has blown up a ton. I always tell people that, like one of my first conventions I was a guest at was Portland Retro Gaming Expo 2011. I premiered my Mr. Gimmick review there, and I always let people know that, hey, back then that convention was like 250 people attending, maybe 300, but that might be stretching it. And I've been to PRGEs where there's well over 10,000 people. So when I started collecting games, even way before YouTube and PRGE in the late 90s, I was like the only person I knew in like 97 or so that was doing it. And so when I started going to Funkolands and flea markets, I really didn't know anyone else doing it. And to see it explode like this, and to meet so many new collectors and lots of sellers that I know now at these, I do about, at my peak I was doing about 9 or 10 conventions a year. Now it's closer to 6, maybe 7 as I've gotten older. And slowing down. It's just amazing to see what's been built, the community, the preservation of not just prototype cartridges and things you didn't know exist, weird controllers and artifacts, but also just the knowledge that's being recorded. Like we have been, a lot of you out there as well, like the first sort of generation of the gaming historians. That started off, probably people started trying to track these things like in the, later 80s into the 90s, and we're all part of that. 1.5 generation. We're not the first people. We're not people like, Joe Santulli, John Harding, Sean Kelly, that were doing this stuff since, probably going back to the 80s, but it's just amazing to see it grow. I'm just rambling now. Retro gaming in general is it's taken on its own cottage industry and then some, because now, even in the past 10 years, the NES Classic isn't even 10 years old. That came out in 2016. So you have all the mini consoles, you have all the FPGA consoles, you have all the HD, Hyperkins and things like that. The Retron, the Retron 5 sort of stuff. You have all the all the retro tinks, you have all the replacement, optical drive replacements, things like that for like Saturn, things that I didn't imagine occurring even 15 years ago, that there'd be this many people trying to keep all these consoles alive, and now it's like future-proofed in a way for a lot of this. Even if the hardware fails, you're gonna have an FPGA alternative. You're gonna have, like I said, these optical drive replacements to play these games and have a way of playing them on the original consoles, or the closest analogy, of these consoles going forward, or the closest replacement, I should say. Pricing out my gaming stuff, as I've spoken on the podcast, started doing that like in January. I did it for like 3 months. I'm at like 80% done. Not all of it, but a chunk of it I want to downsize. I almost tripped over my rolling rocker controller before, I'm not even kidding, pushing things out of the way. So I will probably, hopefully, find a buyer for some of my stuff that'll be going by volume. And if you saw in the podcast, some of you said that you really enjoyed the segment a couple months ago about things I forgot I had that I've stumbled across the past months. I went over like 6 or 7. I fudged a few of them. There were like 2 that I kind of remember, but there was definitely like 3 that I like blanked on or hadn't seen in years. So check out that video. And a lot of you got a kick out of that and want to see more of that. So maybe that'll be a podcast segment that'll happen more. I'm not one to do the one-off videos of, hey, I'm going to show you the things that I got. I know some people might enjoy it. I just never got into that as a habit, because I want to find something interesting, like an interesting way to put that together. Hence, like the NES Punk, stuff, which I'm going to talk about now. The NES Punk is not dead. Might be on the last, 3 or 4, golf holes out of 18. Do the pat math on that. Divide 18 divided by 4. I don't know. Or 4 divided by 18. That's the percentage left. But I have ideas for a few more, at least. Like weird controllers, I should say. I sort of, in my Christmas NES Punk video, I sort of went over some of those weird things I had. I have other weird stuff, so I might do that. NES variants for a long time. I want to go over like this. There's dozens of NES variant cards. I'm not talking about the sealed quality being, opaque or not, or clearer. I'm talking about other things, like major label variants. And then there's something else that might come out sooner. I wanted it maybe by end of June. That's not happening. I'm going to a convention, 2 NA Games in Pennsylvania this weekend, but maybe in July if I get around to it. But one of the reasons why I wanted to do this video, and obviously I'm putting out content with the podcast, but sometimes people don't know what's going on, unless you follow me on social media or on Twitch, which we'll get into. But after the N64 book, which came out in late September officially, and thank you all, anyone out there that supported on Kickstarter or pre-ordered it at ultimatenintendo.com, you can still get it there. After that came out, I said to myself, well, I can take like a sabbatical and relax, which was the plan, kind of the plan around the Super Nintendo book. And then, the pandemic happened. So that was kind of bad timing with that, to go traveling. But I said to myself, well, I always thought about the NES book and the fact that it's been out of print for over 18 months. It went out of print again, the 3rd printing, since Christmas season of 2023. That's over a year and a half ago. And I could have easily just done a couple of minor corrections and said, hey, print out, several thousand more, 4th printing, same cover, and do that. But something told me that I should redo that book based upon the extra writing experience and knowledge, research experience and knowledge, and not just me, but my team that has helped put together the Super Nintendo book and the N64 book, and then the 3rd printing of the NES book. We should go revisit that book, and we should redo it. And it sounds crazy, but it's not as crazy as I guess I could have been, because this is not going to be like a 4-year project. It'll be like a 1-year project. And we are about 44% done with re-editing and rewriting the book. So some details on that. It's entirely re-edited. So this is a whole new book. So no pressure if you bought the first, second, or third prints, but this is going to be a whole new ISBN, whole new cover, whole new format, new screenshots for a bunch of games. Every review will be different. So like every writing will be either re-edited, which means new information, new details, restructured, or some rewritten entirely. I've rewritten already probably 25 or 30 of my own reviews. I did 450. I'm not rewriting all of them, but all of them are going to be re-edited, things fact-checked again, and I think this will be sort of the crowning sort of book in terms of like my career of doing them. I'll always like probably, the Super Nintendo book, for example, that's going to be out of print later this year probably. By Christmas it'll probably be sold out, I would think. And I'll always reprint the books, refine them here and there. They'll be 99% the same from one to the other. But this NES book is going to be entirely different. All the cart graphics redone from scratch. We are doing something that has not been done before. I didn't even put it down in my notes, and it's like one of the most important things. So there is not a uniform, the same way we did for the N64, we created the first sort of like universal, you want to say, label library of like 650 labels or so, international, million seller variants, North America, Japanese, European. We're doing that as well for the NES because there isn't a good collection of those out there, and most importantly, almost none of them that you find, they don't have the spines, the top spines, which to me is very important piece of the art for a lot of those games, especially since some of them, the artwork would curl over from the front to the spine. It would, make that little oop. So my pal and I guess fellow gaming historian preservationist James is helping us rescan all of them, which means we're gonna have all new cartridge artwork. We're gonna have photorealistic cartridges showing the spine and the front, and that has not been done before. Not in my book, not in other books, where you have like a photorealistic cart showing it all in one picture, all nice. So we're doing that, and then we're gonna have dozens of international releases that weren't covered in the first three printings. We're gonna cover in this book. Updated hardware section, probably an updated, canceled, unreleased game section, because there's been so many things found the past several years. So many things, like the SimCity game, for example, the NES version, dumped. The wrestling game, the early WCW game, what was it, UWC? Games like that, there has been probably 20 to 30 significant NES prototypes that have been dumped and preserved since even the past 6-7 years since the last printing. So I could have just reprinted the book. People ask me every week, either message me or email me, hey Pat, when's the book back in stock? I say 2026, new edition, that's the goal, to release it next year. I'm doing commercial streams every Wednesday on Twitch. I've been doing them for 5 years, if you weren't aware, at twitch.tv/CountryCode. I have a great time. There's usually a couple hundred people in the chat. We have our own memes and our own emojis, or emotes, as they call them, the generic emoji, the Twitch emotes. It's usually 3 hours. It's Wednesday. I usually start around 4 to 4:30 Pacific, 7 to 7:30 Eastern. And again, I've been doing it for 5 years. I started during the pandemic, and it's sort of relaxing and fun. It's 70s, 80s, and 90s, and there's surprises. There's always some fun to be had. Sometimes I laugh so hard I cry. And it's one of the more fun things I've been doing the past several years there. The Not So Common Podcast. I did about a dozen episodes with my pal Alex Fasciani. That sort of mini run came to a close. Our lives, we decided we looked at what we had going on, we're super busy. It was getting harder to sync up to prep and to record. And so I enjoyed that sort of run with Alex. There may be another podcast in the future that I do, maybe not on my channel, that might happen this year. So stick around for news of that. It's not guaranteed, but it's been bandied about. Bandied with a D, not bandied, bandied. The CU podcast. We've been doing it now for almost 12 years it'll be. Coming up in a couple of weeks, a few weeks. I think it was July 2013, talking about Ben Affleck being cast as Batman and the 2DS announced. Wow, the good old 2DS. So I guess the news with that is, at some point, it's going to change its format or basically cease production as it is, because we're doing it once a month now, from once a week. And I had to work on the N64 book, and I was too stressed from doing everything. Something had to give. But Ian, I'm allowed to say this, Ian is moving back east next year in 2026. So it may be a time to just give it a send-off by the time he moves. To just say, okay, this might be a good way to just say that's it. Or maybe we still do updates and hangouts even over Zoom. We have to talk about that, but after 12 years of a podcast, there's not a whole lot to talk about anymore with retro stuff. Again, going back to the expansion of the retro gaming community and the industry, there's only so many. It used to be rare to see a retro gaming compilation and like a new, when the Retron 5 came out, it was huge news. Oh, it's playing 5 different consoles at once. I mean, I did a full video review of that. But there's only so many, knock on wood, only so many times you can talk about this stuff and the mini consoles and the scam consoles that you would think at this point would cease to exist, but they keep on existing because people out there keep getting conned. And so like stuff like the Intellivision Amiga, which is still going strong. So it's not ending tomorrow, the CU podcast, but there's a chance that we're gonna have to see it sent off at some point. 12 years is a long run with that. So other than that news, NES Punk, new NES book, pricing out games in my collection, 17 years doing this. I have 2 other, I want to say, big projects, multi-year sort of things that I am working on. And I probably shouldn't spill the beans, but I'm going to say it. So the first one is So that's the first one. The second one is something I've been outlining, and it's a and there's not a guarantee that one's going to happen, but I hope it does, and I hope you get to enjoy that one in a year or 2 or 3. So that's what's going on right now in my life. Thanks so much. 17 years on YouTube? Man, NES turning 40? I buried the lead. 40 years of the NES. It seems like only yesterday for the 25th anniversary, since almost nothing was being done. Nothing for the NES's 25th anniversary. Ian and I did the NES Charity Marathon, the first one in 2010, on good old Ustream. Some of you out there remember that one. Real quick, I'm doing 3 conventions this year, besides the 2 I've done already. I'll be at did I do 2 or 1 already? I did 2. I did Midwest Gaming Classic and SoCal, so I'm doing at least 2 more, and probably 3, maybe 4. I'll be at Too Many Games this weekend, June 27th to 29 in Oaks, PA, and I'll be returning to Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, August 9th and 10th that weekend. And I'll probably be doing 1 or 2 more besides that. So thanks again, everyone. I've been blabbering. I gotta get some dinner. I gotta prepare and prep. I gotta probably edit this video tonight as well. Cut out the dead spots. I'll see you in another 3 years for another channel update for the 20th anniversary of the channel.